All right. Once for the record, can you state your name and affiliation?
Sure, name's Oz Songs. I'm the drummer for Reggaddiction and also the producer of our album Ganja Harvest,
Sweet
a
deal.
reggae tribute to Neil Young.
Dude, I just gotta say, I mean, I'm a huge Neil Young fan, and when Dave sent this over to me, I was like, is something in the air? Because I just listened to Conan O'Brien interview Neil Young like 10 minutes before.
Oh, really? Yeah. You
Yeah.
you put it in the universe, right? And it was just like he came to you with like, hey, how about this, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
But
wicked.
no, I was just wondering, so how did the idea to cover Harvest come to mind? And what
Yeah.
was the first song that inspired the idea to cover the whole album?
In terms of the inspiration, I have to give all the credit to the Easy Star All Stars,
Okay.
right? And I have to give the credit in terms of like what they do for their live shows because they came to Toronto and I saw them perform live and I absolutely fell in love with the dub side of the moon,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what they did in reinventing that album reggae style from start to finish and
Very.
what they did in terms of that live performance to do that because when they first started they started with originally producing that album
Mm-hmm.
and then it was such a huge success that there was a huge demand for them to perform it live and what they did in terms of like taking that album and making it like transforming it so that it was presented in a way that was just like spectacular and
Mm-hmm.
was and just drew you in just like how the album did was just unbelievable to me.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since I saw them perform in Toronto, I always just had in my head like, wow, like what could we do that was similar but like not exactly like that but like maybe a little touch of Canadian in it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you start talking about okay, like what great Canadian album would be great to like reinterpret in terms of like a reggae style, like what are some of the most legendary Canadian albums ever produced,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then right away what comes to mind is definitely Neil Young,
Yes.
right? So that's how we got kind of like from here all over the across the years was it did start, got to give credit where credit is due, it did start by listening and seeing an amazing performance by the Easy Star All Stars.
Very cool. I mean, I do love
Yeah,
me some Dub Side of the Moon, that I remember discovering this and I love all types of music, but I write about reggae music, but
yeah,
I love classic rock and I love, Pink Floyd, I love Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and Neil Young especially. I'm a big, but I like them all. But yeah, that's really cool. I got to ask you, just an aside, have you ever seen Neil Young live?
no, I mean, and I have to, that's something like that's on top of my list
Yes.
is to see him live, right?
Mhm.
And even if I have to travel, like wherever it is, I definitely got to take the opportunity to do that. Have you had the opportunity to see him live?
I have not. I
Yeah,
wish. I've had the
yeah,
opportunity to see Paul McCartney live, and I would love to see him live too. But yeah,
yeah,
it just fell through. So, but that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But so, was there any song that you first heard on the Harvest, and you were like, "Man, I want to do that. I want to tackle that song first."
Well, obviously the first ones that come to mind are like the ones that are most popular, which would be like Old Man
Hmm.
and Heart of Gold,
Hmm.
right? So like when we perform those two live, those are the ones that of course, people are screaming, rewind, rewind,
Hmm.
and we get like a lot of enthusiasm and feedback from the crowd, right?
Hmm.
But in terms of like my favorite to record, I would have to say it would be Words Between the Lines of Age, which is the very last track on the album.
Hmm.
And just because it was so different, because usually typical reggae music's 4/4,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
This one was the timing was 11/4,
Oh wow.
right? And
Hmm.
it was like how are we going to really make this into a reggae track
Hmm.
with the timing like that? How are we going to make sure that everything on the guitar is there, the chank is there on the offbeats, and how are we going to make sure it all kind of the keyboards are there locked in and the organ can get a nice little bubble? how are we going to make all that happen with 11/4?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then thinking and then trying different things and collaborating with all the musicians in the studio to really make that song gel. And it's such an epic song. It's over 5, maybe 6 minutes long. It's very spacey as well also too.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of room for the mix engineer who's Dubmatix, and Dubmatix actually did some work with Easy Star All Stars as well also too, because he did the dubber side of the Moon. He's the dub artist behind that one with Easy Star All Stars. So we were lucky enough to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that last track, Words, is so spacey and the timing is so crazy that he had the opportunity to really do some crazy dub stylings with that song, right? That I really personally love, and I think our listeners love it as well also too. So like that was my favorite run to actually record.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the songs that are bops, but Neil also had some songs that were very relevant at the time, like, Weight on Your Shoulders, talking about, Alabama, and they were the last state to really, accept the 18th Amendment, which, abolished slavery. And, I was just wondering, can we talk a little bit about how the music of Neil Young is still relevant in today's world?
Yeah. Um, there's so many songs, right? Like his catalog
Hmm.
is this absolutely like just humongous, right? And I think he's a trendsetter,
Hmm.
right? I think he's one of the spokespeople for artists in
Hmm.
terms of like what he just did in terms of like um Spotify,
Yeah.
right? In terms of artists not equally getting what they deserve in terms of royalties, and for him demanding all of his music to get pulled down from such a big platform. Like that's a big move, and it
Yeah.
takes courage to do something like that, right?
Hmm.
So, and I think we hear that in his music. Um he's just not he's a pure true artist, and I hear that in the music. He speaks what he believes, right? That comes through the music.
Hmm.
um So I think like when we listen to Neil Young and we take some time and we stop and we really listen to some of the things he's talking about in those lyrics, right? We can see some of the issues of today in the world that need addressing, right?
Hmm.
Through Neil's music for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, and you guys keep that message going, which I appreciate. I was just like, when, like I said, Dave sent that to me, I was just like, this is just so wild how this just worked out. And for yourself a little preamble to me introducing me. I'm a huge Neil Young fan, and like he was a big part of my childhood. So, you know,
Yeah.
I love how you guys keep that going, and then I love even more that it's like reggae-fied, and it's got a reggae beat to it. So.
Yeah.
Little side subject though. I mean, I didn't write this down, but you guys did a cover of Joni Mitchell's "Big Yellow Taxi" too, correct?
Yeah, we did that one too. Yeah, for
That's an
sure.
awesome song, dude. So, and you
Yeah.
guys do a
Thank you.
good job at it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
no
That was a
problem.
lot of fun as well, also too, right? So that was just like kind of just falling in love with the whole process of doing Neil Young. And
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, like what else can we do? We don't want it to end here, right? Like yeah, Joni Mitchell was just like a natural next step after Neil Young for sure.
Yeah, that song. I mean, "Big Yellow Taxi" is just it makes me cry. Honestly, it's so you don't know what you have till you got till it's gone. So, and
Yeah, yeah,
oh man. So I mean, I was wondering. You said you're in Toronto. Neil was born in Toronto, but you
yeah.
moved to, and I'm probably pronouncing this incorrectly. Omni.
Omni.
Okay, I said that right. All right, cool. I thought it was gonna be like "ow my knee" or something. But
Yeah, yeah, Omni.
all right, cool. Where in relation is that compared to where you guys are?
So Omni is actually about 2 hours east of Toronto,
Okay.
right? And this is you're talking about a very small place that I would think that the majority of people living in Toronto don't even know where this Omni actually is, right? I had to kind of like look it up on the map and try to figure out where this place is. And I'm born and raised right here in Toronto, right? So the first time I saw it through email was the first time I saw like Neil Young, moved to Albany. I was like, where the hell is Albany? Like, what? Where is this little tiny little place, right?
Mhm.
So though it's in this region that's better known as the Karatha Lakes,
Okay.
right? And the Karatha Lakes is a very beautiful place in Ontario, Canada, right?
Mhm.
And within the Karatha Lakes, you will find this town called Albany. And I've never been there personally,
Okay.
but it's so close to Toronto that definitely, summer's coming up. I'm gonna probably need to do a little drive out there and take a little tour and get
Mhm.
my little history in of Neil Young, all the places that he may have been to, or recorded at, and maybe had some food at. Kind of
Mhm.
go on my own little Neil Young journey in Albany, right?
Very.
I'm sure it's epic.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was actually when I was doing a little bit of research on seeing where he was born and like where he
Yeah,
eventually moved to. I guess they do some house tours of his childhood home. So hey, you never
yeah,
know where you
yeah.
never know. But I was wondering, we're talking about Canada. What does the Canadian reggae scene look like?
The Canadian reggae scene is strong because like we're lucky enough to, when you think about Toronto, you think about we're kind of like the land of immigrants,
Hmm.
right? If you come to the city, you'll see people, Asians, you'll see Latin America people, a lot of Europeans, a lot of Americans, right? Like they call us like a melting pot of the world,
Hmm.
right? You can One of my favorite days in Toronto is actually when they're doing like World Cup soccer,
Hmm.
right? Because no matter who wins, if like the Italians are playing the Brazilians and Italy wins, there's going to be a party in Toronto,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If England is playing Germany, if England wins, you're going to go to a fish and chips restaurant, get some fish and chips and have some Guinness, and it's going to be a party there. Or if Germany wins, oh, don't worry, you're going to go to a German restaurant and, have some beer there and there's going to be a party, right? Whoever wins, there's always a party in Toronto because we're the home of immigrants,
Hmm.
right? So I think that is kind of cool that we're we're so worldly
Hmm.
in the city.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to say stereotypes or anything like that, but Canadians are typically known to be pretty nice people. And,
Yeah,
having all that around you, and like, I think that being nice and all that is just an understanding of all the cultures. And, you
yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
not just, being nice, it's an understanding of the cultures.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
really,
So with us being that home of immigrants, there's also a huge influx of Jamaicans in
hmm.
Toronto,
Okay.
right? So your original question about how is that Canadian reggae scene
Hmm.
in Canada and specifically in Toronto, it's massive because we've got so much immigrants from Toronto. So there's so much talent
Hmm.
of people that actually come here and reside here
Hmm.
from the Caribbean, that there's just so much incredible people that you can actually network with. For example, one person in our band, his name's Sunray Grennan,
Hmm.
right? And Sunray's dad is actually Winston Grennan. And if you actually know Winston Grennan, he is the man that actually invented the reggae one drop beat with Bob Marley and the Wailers, right? And his son just happens to be someone living in Toronto, right? And just happens to be someone that's we're lucky enough to have in our band, right? So like there's that type of talent and there's that type of like influx of immigration that happens in the city that gives us access to like so much incredible talent.
Hmm. And I'm guessing the whole music scene and together is just, I'm guessing it's pretty damn awesome. Mhm.
It's pretty damn awesome, right? Because like if you want to go see a Latin club in the city, yeah, go listen to Latin music. That's great. We'll
Mhm.
have like Brazilian festivals throughout the summer, which is big, right? So like whatever type of music you want in the city, you can get it.
That's cool. So it's kinda like Canada's New York or Manhattan, I guess, right? Mhm. Sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit like
Alright.
that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I know I keep having an aside. Are you a, baseball fan by chance?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, you like the Blue
Especially
Jays?
the 1990, I think it's 1992, 1993 Blue Jays.
Yes, I was just gonna ask you about that. '92 Blue Jays, man. I was born in '91, so
Oh, okay.
yeah. but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a Yankees fan. I don't know if you see the hat, but it's a Padres hat. But
Oh,
I
okay.
get more shit on the Yankees hat here in Florida than I do the Padres hat. So,
Yeah, I got to go to San Diego at one point. I hear it's absolutely gorgeous.
dude, definitely check it out, man. I definitely recommend it. And if you
Yeah,
have a chance, check out a baseball game or just check out the city. It's just so beautiful.
yeah, one day for sure.
All right. So, I actually we talked about this a little bit, and transferring 11-4 to back down to 4-4. But
Yeah, crazy.
yeah, we were talking. Neil had the help of the London Symphony Orchestra to help capture the magnitude of and the grandiose of the essence of some songs. And how did you
Yeah,
capture that same grand feeling of the album? Because guys do a good job of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I gotta drop her name because she did an amazing job. Her name is Kyra Sorelli,
Okay.
right? And Kyra came in and she layered over when we had the bed tracks for some of the songs that were like orchestra heavy with Neil Young,
Mhm.
and those would be like There's a World and A Man Needs a Maid, which very string, very orchestra heavy, right? And we brought Kyra in and she played the cello on it,
Mhm.
and she also played some violins on it. And then we had Dalmatics mix that together to make one person sound like 10.
That's really cool.
And it gave those tracks that orchestra strings type of feel.
Nice,
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, you guys when I was listening to, it, I was like, man, I was just like, do they actually have a sympathy or a symphony in the room? And like, I was like, holy shit! Excuse my
Yeah.
language. I hate to keep swearing, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's just like it's really well done, and when you compare it to, because I was listening, so what I actually did, I listened to the Ganja Harvest throughout the full through.
Yeah.
Then I listened to the Harvest album all the way through, and then what
Yeah.
I did was listened to the one song from Ganja Harvest, and then listened to it side by side to the
Yeah.
original song.
Oh, wicked. Wicked. That's
Yeah,
the way to do it. Yeah.
yeah, I was just like, I was just like, these guys are killing it, man. Like, how? Like, I was just like, I'll be honest. Dave introduced me to y'all, and I was just like, this is really good. So I really, like I said, I enjoy the music, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was just wondering, what else? Let's see. I was wondering if you discovered anything new about your music making process while recording this album.
Yeah, I think with that one, I mean, we live in a world where everyone's music is like perfect
Hmm.
now, right?
Hmm.
And we live in a world where everything's digital, right? And you can do things over and over and over and over again until it's absolutely perfect.
Hmm.
Digital allows us to have like, before in Neil's day in the 70s, they were recording the tape,
Yep.
right? And it was going just to be like, you're going to do it once. If you don't do it perfect the first time, maybe we'll give you a second try to do it, but it's going to cost us money and it's going to cost us time. And if you want to do it again, guess what? I'm going to re-record over the first take. So we're going to lose the first take, right? And it's just going to be gone. So we're going to it's really about capturing the performance, the essence of the performance back in the 70s, and not really making sure that it's perfect,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I think like when you record Neil Young's music, that's one of the things that I learned was that there's beauty in capturing a moment in time,
Hmm.
and every moment in time is not necessarily perfect. Some of the things that make that moment in time are the imperfections,
Hmm.
right? Um, Neil Young also crazily said that one of his favorite guitar amps was the one that he threw out his window in his apartment. And then he reused it,
Oh.
right? And there was something about it that just sounded awesome to him,
Hmm.
even though he threw it out his window and it was a little rough on the edges, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's kind of like the same thing that I learned is especially like when you're doing reggae music, bring people into the same room,
Hmm.
capture that vibe, right? Capture that moment, capture the vibe, capture the energy, and strive for that. and don't really strive for it to be perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the listener will feel that. They'll feel the energy, they'll feel the vibe, they'll feel the fact that it's so organic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what connects people to music emotionally, right? That rawness to
Yes.
it, right? So that's one of the things that I definitely learned through this whole process and recording, Neil, is that you want to go for that emotion. You want to go for the rawness. You don't necessarily want to go for it to be absolutely perfect.
Very cool. That's really, I mean, that's a great answer, man. I just gotta say, I mean, you know, you just said the thing that, you know, those little tiny imperfections, most people aren't gonna hear, you know, unless they're
Yeah.
like really like know what they're talking about. And you know, I'll be honest, I'm not a musician. I'm a writer, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm a nerd. I mean, I love my history, I love my music, and you know, all that. But you know, I love music too, and it's just like I'm not envious of the people that know how to write music because you know it is an art, and I
Yeah.
have my own art. But it's just you guys did like you know it's just the way you guys captured this just was very well done. So I know
I
I keep
appreciate
saying that, but yeah.
it. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. But I mean, we talked a little bit about this. I was just wondering, you know, as a kid, I said this already, but you know, Neil Young was a huge part of my life. You know, my mom was always playing him in the CD player. And in fact, I honestly think it's in the CD player still, probably. Because I mean, we don't use
Yeah.
CDs very often anymore, which is kind of sad, but you know.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, what was the impact of Neil's Young or that Neil Young had on you as a child or
Yeah.
growing up?
I was late to the game when I was late to the game when it comes down to Neil Young because like I grew up in a very traditional Jamaican household,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So the records that my dad was spinning and that my mom was listening to were like heavily rooted in Jamaica, right? Right. So Bob Marley, of course, right? Toots and the Maytals, of course, Harder They Come, Jimmy Cliff, right?
Mhm.
Those type of albums. I grew up on a lot of soul and black R&B as
Mhm.
well also too. So in the 80s, because I'm an 80s child, so you know, we're talking about Michael Jackson, of course, we're talking about Whitney Houston, you
Mhm.
know.
Definitely.
Um we're talking about the Temptations, even grew up on that,
Mhm.
hearing my dad play that album and watching good old like redone bio movies on the Temptations and stuff like that. So that's what I grew up with.
Mhm.
And the most like folk and country that I was actually exposed to by my Jamaican parents was like Kenny Rogers, right?
And that's real
Right? That
cool.
they had like a Kenny Rogers vinyl,
Mhm.
right? And that was the most. And then it took me growing up, and when you grow up now, all of a sudden you're kind of searching outside of what your mom and dad influenced you with,
Mhm.
right? And you're looking outside of things. And then I was casually introduced to stuff like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and the band,
Mhm.
right? And these types of influences. And then you listen and you take into songwriting, right?
Mhm.
And the musicianship from these people, and it's just like wow, it's unbelievable, it's deep, it's just it's provoking, it's emotional, it was just right.
Yeah, definitely.
So unfortunately I was late, but I got on board, and I'm glad I'm glad I found out about Neil Young
Mhm.
and all the great music that he's been doing.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, that wraps up what my written questions are, but I did think of a couple other questions. You know,
Yeah, sure.
you were born in the 80s. I was born in the
Yeah.
90s. Would you ever go
Yeah.
back to Woodstock and Woodstock of what, 69? I don't know, the 60s Woodstock, not
Yeah.
the 90s. Would
Yeah,
you
I
ever
would
go back to
love
that?
to do that. Of course.
Roll around in the mud?
Yeah, I'd be there. That's
Oh,
for
man.
sure. I wouldn't miss that one.
But yeah, you know, um, I really, I mean, I that just honestly, I was just wondering, you know, the vibe that like, you know, that you came out of the studio with and your further appreciation of music is really cool. But did this, you know, do you think this is going to help steer some fans into the original album?
Say that one more time. You're kind of breaking out there,
No, you're
Brendan.
good. I was gonna
Say it
say,
again for me.
yeah, you're good. I was gonna say I'm kind of hesitating on the words too, but I was just wondering, do you think that, you know,
Okay.
you guys doing the Reggae uh, Harvest album, do you think that it's gonna drive fans to go back and be like, man, who is this guy? Who is Neil Young? I
Yeah.
mean, we're a
Yeah.
little
Yeah. Yeah.
younger, but yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. One of the one of the funniest things is like when we first started performing,
Mm-hmm.
Neil Young, is you have a lot of like die hard Jamaicans in Toronto that
Mm-hmm.
only want to hear reggae the way reggae was originally done. And
Mm-hmm.
if you try to modify it and mess with the original classic reggae sound, they're like, what are you doing? Right? Like, what the blood clot you doing with the reggae?
Yeah.
but you knew, we knew that this same crowd at the live show to sing the lyrics to Neil Young
Mm-hmm.
while we're playing, right? That's when you know they finally have been like, they're on board, they're committed to the fact that, yeah, this is Neil Young, yeah, this is reggae music, and yeah, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it sounds good. It's okay to like it. It's okay that it's good. It sounds a lot different
Yeah.
than what we know in terms of reggae from the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little twist on it, but it sounds absolutely great. So
Yes.
yeah. So yeah. It's been cool. It's been a fun journey.
That's very cool.